So last night at, I guess, 5 p.m. my time, they actually did do an update, and I did post on my community page, but I wanted to go ahead and go through this, with a video, because who reads? Nobody reads. Reading sucks. So let's read this. Here we go. So space update info from the developers. It says, Dear Stormworkers, yesterday was the launch of the Space DLC. The bad news is there were some issues. The good news is that over the last 24 hours, we have released some hotfixes and some major issues are now resolved. Many players have asked for details. Let's discuss. Okay, so I was hoping that my video had an impact, but I don't think it did. But the good news is they actually are going through some of the details and kind of explaining what they changed, which is good. That's a good thing. Not going to complain. So let's see what they said. Sinking ships. Some of the new gravity mechanics had unintended interactions with some of the physics optimizations for vehicles, which resulted in some vehicle parts weighing slightly more or less than they should. This was often an issue with larger vehicles and vehicles with many movable parts. While the change in weight was only small, this could cause ships to set deeper in the water or tilt. This issue is now resolved. I think some people kind of disagree with that, but I think more or less a lot of the vehicles are going to have to be tweaked regardless of this change, because the way the new update changed a lot of things. So I don't think that this is a magic bullet and all the vehicles are fine now. I think a lot of people are still going to have to tweak the vehicles. And I think that's just going to be, something you guys have to do. Oh, I'm so glad I don't play with my vehicles. I don't know what's broken. Okay, let's see. Jet turbines. With the new atmosphere mechanics, the air is thinner higher up, which means less air resistance, but also means that at some height, the air is too thin for the jet turbine engines to be efficient. This is intended, but it was way out of balance with engines starting to lose efficiency only a few hundred feet up. This issue has been resolved. I think Professor Incognito just did a video today with his spaceship that uses the jet engines to get up, or the fans to get up, and it seemed like they were reaching pretty good heights before he had to switch over to the liquid engines. So I think that is resolved. Don't know for sure, but it looked like it was much better. Steam and modular engines. There are issues with steam boilers and many modular engines. This is a reasonably big issue caused by some of the compressed gas changes. We are currently working on this and we will deliver a fix as soon as possible. Okay, so I don't know. I think there's something to do with steam is produced in almost anything. You can produce steam with heat or something. I don't know. Didn't check it out, but they're working on that, and so we'll see what happens with that. Of course, there are other issues to look at, and we will get to them, but the above are the main ones that affect many players. So here's where we get into something that I'm not really buying into, and I'll tell you why in a second. But testing. Believe it or not, we actually did several months of full-time testing. Some of the issues were introduced more recently when addressing other minor issues, such as the sinking ship issue. We were too focused on testing the new features. Okay, that's important right there. We were too focused on testing the new features and specific changes, and simply didn't expect this stuff to break. However, a lot of the problems were so wide-ranging that it would have been easy to discover them, and we should have. All right, so what this tells me, and I forgot to I don't know why I forgot this. I guess I didn't like my old job. But I had suggested that they, as a quick fix, they bring in testers from the community that worked on ships, a builder that only did trains, or a builder only did planes, ships, submarines. And they would be used to test the different features so that when they're doing space, these testers would say, hey, my jet doesn't work, whatever. And that was kind of my quick fix. But what this really shows is they don't have a QA process. So I worked for a software company for 19 years, okay? So some of you put comments that I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to bugs, and software bugs come out and it's, that's just a part of things. That's not exactly true. I mean, yes, it's true to some extent. You're going to get third-party bugs that you're not expecting. Maybe a driver for a video happens, or maybe the Windows operating system causes an issue, and you can't control those things. They're third-party. But when it comes to software development, if you have a QA process, you can eliminate 99% of the bugs before you release. And what we saw here and what we've seen in the past with these DLC and major updates are very common bugs that should have been caught. And I'm not talking about this one. I'm talking about every single update there are these bugs that you're like, how did you miss that? And that's because they didn't have a QA process. So when I worked for the software company, we did what they did. And that is the programmers would add features, and a couple of us would test those features, and then we would push updates to our clients, and then we would get backlash because, of course, there are bugs that were introduced by introducing the new feature. And this happened over and over to us, and the clients would get really upset. And these were major auto companies and airlines that were yelling at me and the crew. And so what we finally did, we finally learned after doing this, getting this backlash, we hired a QA guy, and this guy was really good. And what he did is he came in and he said, okay, I need to know everything about the software, what every button does, what the expected behavior is of each button, and what the screen should show. And I will create use cases, and it will be a checklist, and I will go through this checklist, and I will make sure that every button does what the button is supposed to do. And when you add a new feature, you have to give me that information, and I will add that to the case list, and I will test those. And so what that means for Stormworks is that Stormworks would provide a QA tester, and that QA tester would have a checklist, actual software that's designed for software testing. And he would make, a checklist of all, the use cases that he'd have to go through. So it would include the menu, the editor interface and all the buttons, every part that is in the game. And then he would set up the different things in the game that he would have to test. So if they're going to release a new update, and he would go through, test all the buttons are working, doing what they're supposed to do, no crashes. He would test the pipes to make sure the pipes are still piping, the water is still flowing, and then the new features. And it would be a very long, exhaustive list. And that's just the way you have to do it. And so that's what our QA guy did. He made these use cases, he'd go through them. If he found bugs, he'd talk to the programmers. Programmers would fix the bug. They'd submit the build release. He'd go through again, starting over from the top, and check it out again. No bugs? Okay, fine. We can release this version. We'd release a version to the clients. No problem. No bugs. And like I said, unless it was like a third-party problem where a video driver had an issue or Windows itself was not working with the software properly or something, the bugs were not on our side. And so, of course, if there was a problem, we'd have to do workarounds for Windows or the drivers or whatever. But the point is that the software itself was stable and there were no bugs introduced with new features. But what he did is he took it a step further. He told management and the owner of the company and the programmers, point blank, if you guys make a change and you're expecting me to get it done on the day that you want to release it, then know that it is not going to be released until I go through the checklist and do all of the testing. And if I go through that testing and we release an update, and all of a sudden the customer says, oh, we need another feature. You add another feature, I'm going all the way back through that list, and you're going to have to wait. So what that meant is if you're doing minor changes at the last part of the thing, then you better hold off till the next Friday update or the next day, because you're not going to push it. And that's because you do not want to introduce bugs like they did. So for example, when they say some of the issues were introduced more recently when addressing minor issues, such as sinking ship issues, which doesn't even make sense because that was after they released. But my point is if they changed something before launch, for whatever reason it was, if the QA guy didn't go through, test it all, and approve it, then that version should have never hit the deployment branch. And that's how software development is done the right way. Took our company a while to learn, taken Meta a hell of a long time to learn because they're still doing it. They still don't have a QA process. They still are not testing. And like I said, they're not even using the kind of the cheap way of testing, which is using the community builders for testing. So there's an issue here that they're not resolving. Now, the fact that they went and, at least posted this talking about the change that were made, great step. I hope they keep that up. I hope every time they make a change, they explain how the change works, what the change does, why the change was done, and whether we agree with it or not, at least we know why they're doing what they're doing, instead of just a black box of like, here's an update, here are the features, how's it work? I don't know, but there they are. So hopefully that's something that they look into as a QA tester, a really good QA tester that says, sorry, Deltars, you can like kick your feet and scream, but until I go through this checklist, you're not deploying this build. And if you don't like it, well, then maybe you should have got your submission in earlier for me to test. That's what they need. I don't think they're going to get that because yeah, come on, guys. Just doesn't seem like that's kind of the company they are. It's just kind of like spread out thin, working on several projects at the same time, trying to keep Stormworks alive, trying to keep money coming in, and the game suffers and the community suffers because of it. So I think that's all I could say about that. But anyways, that was just something I wanted to put out there because, I hate the comments pretending like, this is okay, that bugs are a part of the game. I mean, if you're Bethesda, of course they have bugs. They have giant trees of dialogue and missions, and I have no idea how they test that and what the process is. But for a game like Stormworks, there are things that they can test that are predictable, that can be tested before a launch. So hopefully, again, like I said, I hope they start doing that. But let's not hold our breath, but let's cross our fingers. Okay, so community reaction. Let's read this because I need to address this part too. The vast majority of community have been very supportive. To those of you that have patiently stood by for fixes or messaged us your support, thank you and sorry for breaking your game. I mean, what's to say about that? That's kind of the group that is, the positive group, or the I don't care group, which is just kind of, waiting for things to get fixed and, not really getting upset. No big deal. It's a game and we'll wait for the fix. That's cool. A small minority have unfortunately launched their own campaign within minutes of the new update launch. We're recruiting to their Discord, where they have organized and coordinated attacks. We have received Discord raids, review bombing, abuse, and death threats. To these players, we ask you to consider your actions. We understand your frustration, but we cannot respond to aggression, demands, or threats. Okay, so there's a couple things here. First off, I was invited to some protesting server, but that's not the way to go. So protesting online usually amounts to what they're going to, like what they're saying, raid a Discord and put a bunch of crap up, put a bunch of memes up, go ahead and go to the workshop and put vehicles up and congest the workshop that already sucks and make it worse for players that are trying to play the game and look at builds. That's not a protest. It's just trolling. That's not going to do anything. So my thoughts are, if you want to protest this game, you don't buy it. Okay, don't buy the DLC. If you want to protest the game, write a review that is truthful and don't cry about the game, but say exactly why you're upset or frustrated with the game. That's protesting when you do that kind of review. Just to get your friends that don't even own the game or whatever to complain about the game or something like that, that's not protesting. That's just trolling. So don't do that. But go ahead and don't buy the DLC or refund the DLC and write a review, and that's fine. That's fair. If they don't like the reviews, that's their own problem, because this is what they brought on themselves when they don't test what they're doing, and they didn't test it. They didn't test it at the last minute, and they don't have a QA process. So you can't complain about review bombing. It's kind of a fuzzy line between review bombing and people that are upset that are giving a valid review. So there you go. The third thing is make videos suggesting what needs to change. That doesn't mean cry and criticize what's already done. That means make suggestions. My suggestions, of course, are bringing in testers, bring in community to help with the game, hire a QA guy that knows how to QA. Those are suggestions. So finally, the last part of this that is a problem and isn't even related to this organized protesting campaign crap is the death threats. Now, I'm assuming that the death threats are, younger audience. Sometimes I'm surprised by who says what, but I'm guessing it's a younger audience. that is emotional and are saying these things, and they don't understand that when you do death threats in this world as it is now, it's not a good thing, because death threats are made to a lot of content creators, to developers, and every once in a while there's some person that has emotional issues that takes those death threats to the next level. And so it's not amusing to do that. It's not edgy, it's not trendy, it's not cool, it's just not good. And so if you're one of those people that are doing death threats because you're emotional or whatever, just stop. Knock that off. And if you're a person that you are actually feeling these emotions, that you want to do violence to someone or yourself because of a game or other reasons, whatever they may be, take a breath, step away from the game and the community, and go get some help, because it's not good to be feeling emotions that strong over something as simple as a game or anything like that, or people, that irritate you. You can't do that. Life is hard, so you really can't approach it like that. So please, if you are actually having emotional distress over this stuff, get some help. And there are numbers I've listed below. There are people that are trained, that can understand where you're coming from and relate to you, and you should go and seek out that help. For the other folks that are just doing death threats because it's a meme or whatever, knock it off, grow up. I don't know what else to tell you, but yeah, don't do it. So yeah, I think that's pretty much wrapping it up here. The last part they have here is next steps. And as usual, it says we will get on with resolving the main issues. We will work through these tasks one at a time and expect to keep publishing improvements over the coming days. Further ahead, we will also be looking at how we change the way to work to ensure the same issues don't repeat in the future. Again, I think I've said in previous videos years ago, bring your community in that cares about the game and have them test the various aspects that they are good at. Of course, the new one today is bring a QA tester in and listen to what they're saying. If they tell you you're not publishing your update because he didn't go through the testing procedure, I guess you're going to have to delay a Friday update because you didn't get it in early enough. But like I said, I don't think they're going to do that. But that's the way to do it. And, every update will be freaking polished. I mean, that's the way to do it. So anyways, that's it for this video. I wasn't planning on making this video, but since I did the update yesterday and then there was the protest talk and the threat talk and all that stuff, I figured I'd make one more video, and so now we can move on, and maybe I can do some videos with Frantic and Blue and Neo and Professor, and we can get back to having some fun with the game. So that is it. I will see you sooner or later. Again, thank you for all your support, and I really appreciate all of you that take the time to comment and interact with me and, all that stuff. Give me your suggestions, and yeah, it's all good. So thank you very much, and I will see you next time.